From Chicago to the world, this is another exciting edition of my Saturday Night Live House of Freestyle Limas dance party. And we're not doing a lot of dancing right now, even though, as I dedicate the show to the memory of Johnny Lira, he probably, would give me a right hook and a left uppercut and say, dude, it's time for a party. We're celebrating the life and the memory of Johnny Lira, who was a personal friend of mine and a personal friend of so many others. And he passed away. I got the call not even an hour ago. Nina Lira, his daughter, his oldest daughter, called me, and his son-in-law Joey called me. And they let me know that Johnny, after a long sickness, had passed away. And if you have any connections at all to the Union League Boys and Girls Club, especially the Classic Club 2 on Walcott and Race, then you likely know who Johnny Lira was. I met Johnny when he was a staff member at the club. I mean, he was a club kid who grew up there in the late 50s and 60s. But when I met him, it was the mid-70s, and he was working there, and he was volunteering as a boxing coach. At the same time, he was a professional boxer, and somehow or another we clicked, and we remained friends for all of these years. I spoke to him probably not even 2 months ago, and he was having trouble speaking as it was, and we would talk, and then he would get tired and he would say his goodbye, and then we would talk again, and I'm honored by the fact that he would call me when he wanted to talk about stuff, and he would ask about the neighborhood and Leo Barron, the director of the club, and what else is happening with the club kids, and Johnny was just one of those. And so if you don't know, and I wrote it on my Facebook, Johnny Lira's passed away. He's been sick for a long time. I remember in 2008, it didn't look really good back then, and we did some things for him. And fortunately, he had I want to say a liver transplant, and he managed for another 4 years. I mean, the guy was a boxer, and the rounds would go on and on and on with him. Johnny was a club kid. He was a staff member. He was a friend. He was a mentor to so many of the Union League Boys and Girls Clubs, including myself. I knew him probably about 35 years. And I have incredible respect for him. As I wrote, he was a Golden Gloves boxing champion. He was the United States lightweight boxing champion in 1979, believe it or not. And in 1976, Johnny was like in the semifinals to get into the Olympic Games, and some guy named Sugar Ray Leonard ended up beating him out for that team. And Johnny told me that story, which was an incredible story, because Sugar Ray became an icon and a hero to so many. And Johnny would have been walking in those boxing boots, and he just missed it. He was a champion in and out of the ring. Of course, we're going to miss him tremendously. Not that many on the Celebrity Hotline right now. A former U.S. lightweight champion, and you were that close to the 76 Olympics, Johnny.
I was a bronze medalist in 1977 in the Olympic box-off, which was a boxing tryout here in the United States, which is an equivalency to this tournament. I was the bronze medalist, and then Sugar Ray Leonard was the guy who ultimately went. So he beat me out of my spot to go. We didn't fight necessarily, but the guy who beat me, Leonard beat, and they qualified him to go to the Olympic Games. He went on to win the gold medal in the Olympics, and his career, the rest is history.
No, for those who are not in the know, talk a little bit about your professional career. I was lucky enough to be able to get to know you as I was growing up at the Boys and Girls Club, and you worked there. And we didn't really have a grasp on the fact that you were a pro until we saw you on ABC's Wide World of Sports on a Saturday afternoon, fighting for the title. For those of us who are not aware of Johnny, the pro boxer, tell us a little bit.
Well, it starts back at the Boys Club, really, more than my pro career. I started at the Boys and Girls Club. And what was so ironic was I was learning the game of chess. You had to learn to go into the library and learn the game of chess for the first couple of weeks at the club. And then after you played that for an hour, you read a book for a half hour, you played the game of chess for a half hour, then the librarian allowed you to go to the other areas of the club. Well, when she would assimilate all the boxing moves to showing us how the chess pieces move, she had simulated into boxing moves. She'd say the pawn is like a boxer's jab. The right hand is the queen is like a boxer's right hand. The left hook is like a chess master's rook. And she would assimilate boxing pieces to punches and the strategizing of the event. Well, then the Boys Club had a boxing room up on the third floor, and I went moseyed into the boxing room, and the boxing instructor, he would assimilate the boxing moves, the chess moves. And I said, well, I know this stuff. The person in the library just taught me this stuff. And that's how I fell into boxing in the first place. As a pro, right before my professional career in 1976, after I was done with the amateurs, I was working at the Boys and Girls Club from around 74 up until 76. Then I moved to Las Vegas, and I turned professional in Las Vegas and was fighting out of New York. Don King was my promoter. I was sponsored by a number of the casinos in Las Vegas. And then in 1979, 1980, my daughter was getting older. Well, you know my daughter Nina.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to come home. She was needed me to be there for her as a father. And so I started working back at the Boys Club again. And then I was boxing part-time working full-time at the Boys Club with the CETA program as a community outreach worker. And then I was boxing part-time and training fighters and doing professional things.
No, not only were you a club kid who went on to do some great things in boxing, and you also dipped a toe a little bit in terms of the movie business. I guess kids could relate to you now if they're watching Dancing with the Stars, because you had Evander one year. This year you got Floyd Mayweather, and they're saying, dancing is really like boxing. So boxing, you can kind of connect with a whole lot of other things that kids do now if they're not so much into boxing. But you got to chill on the Celebrity Hotline with Shannon. That's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool.
You had no idea, because neither did I.
No.
But that's the neat thing about having been around for so long that you're old, is that people will call you and say, yo. For the last several months, going back, we've been talking a lot about Johnny Lira. Now, with Club Kids and ML's radio, there are people who know who Johnny Lira is, and of course, because it might be kids and their parents listening, people who do not know who Johnny Lira is. So before we go much further, either one of you, Carlos, who was a boxer who trained under Johnny, but it wasn't a typical story who trained under Johnny, because you were like a little guy, a kid. I got pictures of Carlos tiny, duking it up.
6 years old.
And then, Nina, you're not the typical club kid who knew Johnny, because you're kind of related to him. You share last names.
Yeah, we do.
And a strong resemblance too.
So Johnny's daughter Nina is here, and one of his mentees, Carlos, is here. If I were to ask you both, who's Johnny Lira, for people who may not know, what would you say?
Well, for me, that's pretty simple. I mean, growing up in the neighborhood, Johnny was a hero to most of us. Just a big, shining star. Celebrity, and everyone looked up to him. Everybody wanted to talk to him and touch him and be near him, and he was so accessible. It always has been now, and at the prime of his career, and so he was absolutely a shining star.
So in short, Johnny, at least when I was a kid, before Shannon had music, Johnny, like you say, he was working at the club at the time. I didn't look at him as a boxing instructor. I just looked at him as a guy that worked at the club. You looked at him differently because you became involved with Johnny as a boxer.
I'm sorry. I'm looking for words of wisdom to those who, in the city that we live in now, these young people are faced with so many different type of decisions, and not all of them good. And you guys grew up, and you had to face some of the same decisions. Obviously, you guys have been able to become something based on the choices that you chose to make. So basically, I guess I'm looking for advice for young people that may be faced with those type of decisions. He gives you the heavy questions, don't he?
Yeah, thanks. I guess what I can say is just, you look at people who, drugs, for example, you look at people out there doing drugs, they're not going anywhere, and it's not the thing to do. It's not where I would want to be. I've always been the kind of person just wanted to do something, go places, and you just gotta be focused.
So I guess you gotta find something positive to motivate yourself.
Sure.
Schooling.
Good role model.
Excellent.
I beg to differ. Let me add something more in here. You know what? If you got a sense of humor and you want to do it, just go do it. I mean, Wayne and I will go on anywhere we've gone throughout our years of knowing each other and being close friends, and we've traveled throughout the country, and we've been in some slumps, and we've been in together, and we've been on top of the heap, and we've been on top of the heap together. And through it all, wherever we go, we always have a great sense of humor. We're laughing all the time. When we came in, did you see us always laughing and giggling and have to walk out of the room? And
well, that was good. I was hoping you guys weren't mad at me for being.
And then ultimately you put words to paper, and Johnny mentioned your essay when I talked to him last night. He says, Carlos is going to be in studio tomorrow, and he's like, he wrote that story. So this just seemed to flow from you.
Well, of course, I mean, I just remember so vividly. I think I was 6 or maybe 8 years old, and I was brand new at the club. So anyone that had ever been blessed with being able to experience that place could understand. It was the first few weeks, so I was just trying to feel my way around the joint. I didn't know anyone, or I just know a few people. My father had entrusted me with one of the program directors over there, so I was just very shy, and I walked downstairs, and here's this superstar, beating up on a heavy bag, and I just was watching. The energy in that room was unbelievable, and so it just was really, really larger than life for me at that time. I was just a young guy in a very well, for me it's a spiritual place, but just such a powerful energy in that whole building. And then there's this one little corner of the building that just is exploding with energy, and the one shining light out of that room is Johnny Lira. And I can understand how you felt growing up, kind of. I think Johnny felt it. I think Johnny made everybody feel that way. I think nobody felt around him like he was unapproachable or anything like that at all. He was just very very accommodating all the time. He just made you feel like you were, he was part of the group. He was part of the brotherhood or the family, And so I was pretty young when I first met Johnny, and he just brought me into that room and made me feel at home. And I just I'll always have a special love for John because of that,
I keep talking about John Lira, club kid gone good, and becoming the U.S. lightweight champion, ending up in Gladiator, the movie, and working in the political field. But at one point, you were also a club kid that didn't do so good.
There was a lot of things that fascinated us in the area. A lot of our role models were burglars and thieves. Drugs wasn't coming in through the city at that time. Not in our area. I mean, no one even was doing anything with marijuana. But there was a lot of guys who were drinking, and they'd get into street fights, and they would steal mostly. And they were burglars. Some of the top burglars in the country came from our neighborhood, which is nothing to be proud of, but that's the truth. And so what fascinated us was the intrigue of getting into places we weren't supposed to be allowed to get into. So that was the kind of thing. And then the peer pressure and all of our friends being into it. But then the Boys Club having so many programs and exposing us to so many different areas of life and different experiences. Finally, the good took over, and learned my lessons and said, why should I put my energy in a negative direction when I can put my energy in a positive direction and get more out of life? And so the common sense of it all, from all the different seminars and lectures, and the club going to the camps and meeting different particular individuals that were working at the club, Leo Barron, Jim Swab, Jim Casario. These guys were great guys. They never gave up on us.
It's interesting that you too followed in those same footsteps, because everything that you went through, which included getting locked up and appearing before judges, you turned that around and you started talking to young people about mistakes that they could maybe avoid if they make decisions a little bit differently.
Well, it's all about a choice and decision. And if you take your time in the retrospect, evaluate your mood and your feelings, and really think about, when they say step back for a second and think for 30 seconds, when you're able to start doing that and self-analyze your own action and what you're really trying to do, that's when you start preventing yourself from making stupid choices.
So as you came along as a young man, how did things change in terms of the people that influenced you? Apparently you were influenced by a negative group early on, and then you became influenced by people like Ed Kelly as you got older.
a lot of the younger guys, our peers that we grew up with, all came from decent families. Hardly anybody came from not a decent family. Their moms and dads all worked a job. They all were, they all went to good schools. They all wore nice, clean clothes, and there was no real reason for us to be getting involved in the trouble we were getting involved in. It was just more of the excitement and the peer pressure, and through anthropology, group peering. Groups that would set up a peer who's the dominant male, so on and so forth. So just and reflecting upon that as it was happening, and watching a lot of guys not making the right choices and getting shot and getting stabbed and ended up in jail for a real long time. And then drugs came in and they started messing around, getting messed up on drugs. And knowing them how handsome they looked and how great the girls looked when they were younger people, and how positive and fun-loving they were, and how the drugs and that lifestyle was going to making them a changed person. I didn't want that. I seen it. I was able to identify it, and I changed all my energy and put it in another direction. And then I became a father at a young age. I remember looking at my daughter in the crib one time, and I was thinking to myself, I wonder what she's going to think of me when she becomes a young woman. What kind of father I'm going to be? What kind of example would I be setting? And that was one of the major motivating factors too. I wanted to, give her a good role model.
And love will shine on you one day.
Well,